I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and today is July 5th, 2024, and we are making the month 5 of Moonbeams. And so Moonbeams is our charity quilt along, and we still have quilt kits left. I wanted to show them to you. At the end, I am going to show you all the previous blocks we have made, but our Moonbeams kit comes packaged in this cute box, and as you can see, this is how I'm keeping all of my leftovers. And so the box is great for leaving all your leftovers. When you're done, obviously, hopefully, you know, this will be empty, and then you can use it for something else. So we do have quilt kits left over. We are very low on the navy background. That will not be reprinted, but I can tell you the rest of the line will be reprinted and will be back in stock at Fat Quarter Shop around September, October. So if you're short any of the fabrics and we don't have them online, we will have them online soon. We have raised $28,500, so thank you so much. We are very short of our $100,000 goal, but maybe we just had too big of a goal this year. But this is our 11th annual charity quilt, and all the money that we raise goes to Make-A-Wish, so that's super exciting. The fabric collection in this kit is Strawberry Lemonade by Sherry and Chelsea. The kit is 68 by 80, and I'm going to show you how to make this block. So the first thing I always say when you're looking at a block is first open your pattern and just look at your pattern. So if I look at my pattern and then I look at my block, you can see there are a lot of half square triangles, and then this, you know, it doesn't ring out as something that right away I know how to make. So I look at the instructions and I think, okay, it's corner squares and more corner squares. Okay, great. And then what do I need to cut bigger? And the only thing I'm going to cut bigger is this outside ring so that I can trim my block to be exactly 15.5-inch square. So that's how I've cut everything. Basically, everything's cut normal except this outside ring. So we're just going to jump into the pattern. You will be making 2 blocks. They're identical. And in this block, these 2 units are the same. This unit is different, and this unit is different. So you've got 3 units total. So this is the outside ring, so I'm going to skip that, and we're just going to talk about the half square triangles first. So anytime I'm working with half square triangles, I'm going to look at how many I need to make. It says I need to make 44. 44 divided by 2 is 22, and that matches here, 22. It needs to measure 2.5 inches by 2.5 inches, which is unfinished. So if you go to our cheat sheet for half square triangles, and you go to unfinished 2.5, that means it's going to be finished 2 inches, and that means I need 2-inch finished half square triangle paper. So I got some triangles on a roll, 2-inch half square triangle paper. So basically, for this entire thing to make 2 blocks, you need 22 squares. So basically, you would put your fabrics right sides together and just open this and do 22. What I would do is I would do, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I would do 7. I would cut 7. That would be 14. And then I would cut 22 minus 14 is, let's see. And then I would do 8 squares. And then I would do a 4. So basically, because this is going to give you that 20 inches wide. You can't go wider than this. So I would do this. And what I would do, I'm going to show you. I would do them all at once. And you want to get the full length. You know, you want to be able to go all the way across. So that's what I mean is you can fit the 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you're going to put this right sides together with the navy right sides together. And you're going to cut 7, cut there, and then cut here. and do 2 strips, and that's going to give you 22 squares, which gives you 44 half square triangles. A lot of you already know how to do the half square triangles. If you don't want to use the paper, what you can do is you can cut the squares 3 inches, piece them like the pattern says, and trim them down to 2.5 inches. So it's up to you how you want to do that. When your half square triangles are done, they should measure exactly 2.5 inches square, and you should have 44. You're going to use 22 in each block. So here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22. So you're going to use all of those, 22 in each one. So make those. And then you're going to lay out your fabric C's and 8 half square triangles. And this pattern really is all about fabric placement and making sure everything is in the right spot. So if you're matching this to this, you're making sure they're all your navies are going this way. You're going to sew that together. I pressed open. You can press, the pattern does say to press open. And this is how it looks once you get all of those together. You're going to make 2 of these for each block. So when you're looking at the block, 1 goes here and 1 goes here. So that's the first 2. Your next one is going to be different. So we'll just pick these back up and I'll show you how to lay that out. This time you're going to lay out 3 fabric C's. So you're going to have a C here, here, and here. And your navies are going to go like this. And then you're just going to double check to make sure that's right. And then when you sew it together, it will look like this. This one right here is going to go right here, and when you place it, you're going to see that navy go across. So you'll have navy dots, navy squares here, and navy squares here. And that's going to give you kind of that tree of life look. You're going to make 1 of these for each block. And a lot of you have already made stuff like this, so I didn't want to step it out, but I am going to step out this, which is your tree trunk, and I'm going to walk through this in detail. Now you're going to take your fabric H square, your fabric A squares, so you've got H squares which are green and A squares which are navy. You're going to draw a line on the wrong side on both sides of the navy. Sorry about that. And then what you're going to do here is, instead of just relying on the fabrics to stick together and to stay in place when you're sewing, because when you sew, this is going to shift. So I would definitely pin in the corner and then stitch on that line. Once you're done stitching, trim a 1/4 inch away and press and get that out of the way. And then add this one. You can't layer them and do them at the same time, because if you do, you'll sew over the previous seam. Basically, it's going to look like this. And I would pin. And then, once you sew on this line and trim away, you're going to have 2 big triangles left, these 2 triangles. So you could sew these together, put them in your bucket of scraps, or just, you know, make something to put on the back of your quilt. But these are definitely ones where I wouldn't throw the fabric away. In fact, you can probably get a 2.5-inch square out of it once you're done. Once you sew that, it looks like this. And then you're going to be working with your fabric I, which is green, and your fabric F, that is white. And this is where it can get tricky, because you just want to make sure you are, you have your fabric on the right placement, because this one, since I feel like units like this are easy to kind of, you're not used to doing them, it's easy to make a mistake. So I'm going to make sure that I place my green strip that way. And then I'm going to add my white. I'm going to pin that, sew on the line, trim 1/4 inch away. And then you'll have this left over. I would probably save this. I would not save that unless you want to save a 1.5-inch square. That's up to you. Once you sew that on, it will look like this. And then you're going to do the same thing down here. And so you can see it's kind of like a V block. I mean, or it's an arrow block basically. And then once you sew this line and trim 1/4 inch away, what I would do is take your 6.5-inch square ruler, put it on top, and you can see it's a little bit, a tiny bit too big, very, very slightly on 2 sides. So I'm just going to trim anything excess off. And then I'm going to take my previous units, and we're going to, this is where I am going to sew. So I'm going to put the arrow unit down here, put this square up here, this square down here, and remember I said this square across. So I'm thinking that's right, but I'm going to step back and just look at it. And I think it's right. We've got the 2 squares here, the white going in, and we've got this going this way. So what I'll do at that point is put it on a design board. And here, obviously, you want to make sure your white is here, because if you do this, it's not going to make sense, the block. Okay, so I'm going to pin these together and show you some tips. So right here, you want this right here, that little tip, to touch right here. So I'm going to mark this at 1/4 inch. And I'm going to pin that polka pin right here. So you're going to put your pin right there, poke it through, and put your pin right through that white. That way they're going to touch. Pin here. And since there's a lot of triangles, a bunch of different sizes, you know, you definitely have to pin. And when you're lining this up, you know, if you line it up like this, obviously your seam's going to be too short on this side. If you line it up over here, it's going to be too big. So you want to make sure when you're pinning that this is really all lined up nice. So that's that one. We're going to pin these together, and we're going to poke the pin at these intersections. So we're going to do this. I'll pin at the beginning and the end first. And so you can see when I've pinned, I'm making sure both sides line up, and then I'm going to poke a pin here, poke the pin here, and then you want it to be nice and tall and straight, and then place the pin back in. And then what I'm going to do is we're going to sew this together. I'm going to sew a couple stitches here, chain piece, and just keep going. And then we're going to iron. With this quilt, because it is navy, we're using color 2600 by Aurifil, which is a light gray. Okay, I'm going to take that pin out right before I get to it. If you take it out too early, your fabric might shift too much. So from here, you can see this chain. I've kept that together. I'm going to set the seam, press to one side, and then I'm going to press open. Sorry, I kind of got these a little. Okay, then you're going to unclip this. But what I wanted to show you was, it's going to be really hard to get all of these to line up perfectly because most blocks don't have 22 half square triangles. That's a little excessive. So if they don't line up at this point, I would kind of leave it. That's why before I started to iron, I didn't even look to see if the points lined up because it's almost impossible. Now from here, I'm going to pin at every intersection. And do the polka pin. I think as long as you pin up front and then don't take your pin out until right before you sew over it, you're going to have the best luck. And that's about all you can do. Other than that, there's not much else you can do. Now here, instead of doing polka pin, I can just line this up to where, if you want to do it a different way, just line that up so that that lines up evenly. And then we're going to sew a 1/4 inch away. And when I'm sewing, I want you to see where my finger goes before I put the little seams through. I use my finger to guide. So I'm pushing that seam down because it's pressed open and I don't want it to flip up. Now that's something you could use a seam ripper for, by using this pointy edge, or you could use a stiletto if you're scared you'll run over your finger. Same thing here. I'm not even going to see if things lined up because it's probably not going to line up. I'm gonna set my seam, press to one side, oop, it lined up, yay! Now, one thing I would say is if it was me sewing this at home, I would not sew both blocks at one time because that's 44 triangles. That's way too many triangles to try to get going the right way and all the things. So what I would do, make one block, stop, and then make the other block. Now from here, I'm gonna add my fabric ease to this side. And then I'm going to add my fabric D's here and here, and the J's here and here. It actually doesn't matter logistically. You just need to make sure your whites are at the green point and your square point. That's all you need to worry about. So what I'm going to do first, I've already sewn these two together, so that's here, and sewn these two together, which is here. But what I'm going to show you is we're going to sew this together. Now, like I said, I cut this 1/2 inch wider and 1/2 inch taller. So I'm not even going to worry about lining this up, but I am going to pin. If you just go sew, your fabric underneath might go way in. So I'm gonna sew this and then we'll chop it off at the ends. So I'm gonna get that nice and flat. Sometimes you can sew without pins. I just think if you've taken so much time to do really nice half square triangles on the inside, and then you just slop this on the side, it might not come out as nice. And then I want to show you two things. Okay, I'm going to sew this. I'm going to start out here. We're going to chop that off. But when you look at it from the back, this navy should be 100% lined up. Nothing should be hanging over. And you can sew from the back side if you want, and that will make sure you hit these 1/4 inch seams. I don't like to do that. For some reason, I like to sew this way. Just because I feel like if my seams are already the right distance, they should be okay. So I'm just gonna sew with this on top with my seams on the bottom. This is opposite of how most people sew, just so you know. And I would just try, you know, maybe you do one block one way, one block the other, and see which works best. Set your seams. Hopefully you haven't chopped off any of the white. And then from there, I am going to press open. You don't have to, you can press to one side. And that right there, I'm not gonna fix that, that's totally fine. And then from here, I want to make this even. So I'm just gonna chop this off right here. And the reason I have cut these 1/2 inch bigger is I'm gonna trim it down so it becomes exact. And then it makes it easier when you put all of your quilts together. So remember, when you come back here, you want your white square to be next to your navy square and your green square, or your green. So here, it doesn't even matter if this lines up because I cut them bigger, but what I'm gonna do is put this right sides together, this right sides together. I'm gonna pin at this intersection. And then here, I just want to lay this where it's right on the edge. And that doesn't line up, and that's okay, right there. I don't need to pull it or anything because it's going to, we're going to chop it off. And we've already trimmed the other one. So when I'm done with this one, I can show you this compared to the trim one so you can see the difference of how it is before and after. And then I wanted to let you know, if we get to $50,000, we are going to do a 1-hour Zoom call with me to one lucky winner. You just have to make sure when you make your donation of over $25 or more, you put your actual name in the donation box at the Make-A-Wish website. So again here, I'm leaving this flat piece on top instead of the seam side up. Do the other side. Again, set your seams, press to one side, cross your fingers you didn't chop off your points, and it's wavy out here, and that's okay because we're going to trim that down. Press open. And you can see that folded over. That's okay. I'm just going to leave that. Some days I leave those, some days I don't. I think it's fine today. At the end of this in October, we will be auctioning off 5 quilts for Make-A-Wish. One will be this quilt. One will be made by Pat Sloan. One by Lisa Bonjean of Primitive Gatherings. One by Robin Pickens, and one by Lisa Alexander from Moda. Okay, so now I want to show you. This is the one that has not been trimmed down, and this is the one that has. So when you look at it, it'll be about an inch bigger. So you can see it's about an inch bigger because I made it bigger. This is totally optional. The pattern is written for this. I just like everything to be really nice and perfect. Okay, so if you look at your pattern, it's 15.5 inches unfinished. Before the video started, I did the math so I wouldn't have to try to do it in my head. 15.5 inches divided by 2 is 7 3/4. Luckily, this block is very much has seams in the center. So I'm going to take a wide ruler that can do at least 7 3/4 inches wide. And I'm going to place it there. And it should be about 1/2 inch chopped off. So I've got 7 3/4. I'm going to do that. I'm going to rotate it and do that on all sides. And when I do the second cut, what I want to do is line this up. I want to make sure that's lined up. And this line, it's not even right. That line is lined up, and then 7 3/4. And so just so you know, with this Moonbeams kit, we have given you enough fabric so that you can do these extra cuts. Not all kits would you be able to do that. So again, top, 7 3/4 right in the middle. One more cut. Line up at the top. Now obviously this is one where you want to make 100% sure, and you want to make sure you're not. Now here, if you wanted to, you could, instead of doing it that way, you could do 15.5 since you cut the other side. So you could put 15.5 right here. So you got 15.5, and then you'd cut here. Leave your rotary cutter blade in. Move the ruler up and cut. So you could cut, you know, that way too. And that's when I usually use this 8.5 inch ruler, is when I'm cutting something big. Now, obviously, if there was a Creative Grids 15.5 inch square ruler, and if I had that at home, that's kind of an odd size to have. I could just put that on top, line up the centers of my ruler, and cut around. So I'm gonna show you just a lot of the blocks from the previous months, just so you can see kind of like a little trunk show of all the blocks we've made. These obviously will be in the quilt that we are auctioning off. So these are the Tree of Life. And this is, I think, in backwards order of the way that we've sewn them. Some have been harder, some have been easier. We are working on next year's charity quilt. I don't have enough now to give you, except I can tell you we're trying to do something a little bit different this year. This was one of the harder blocks, this one right here. This was a harder block, I think, and these are these hourglass. This one had hourglass, half square triangles, and flying geese. And so what I have really enjoyed about the charity quilt is that we divide that up over 6 or 7 months. And so you can make these really hard blocks just a little bit each month, and by the end of the year you have a beautiful, beautiful quilt. So these are all the blocks. The next video that we do on this quilt, we'll be talking about the finishing and how to assemble the finishing. So these are the blocks, and then I want to show you our sample maker blocks. Antoinette is a collection by French General. Anne made these blocks, and she used a background from French General favorites that's 13529-21. And then we have blocks in the Honey Bloom collection by Three Sisters for Moda. Angel sewed these, and she used a background color of Bella Solid Color 200. The next blocks are from the Ridgewood collection by Minnick and Simpson. Shelley made these blocks, and she used the background from the Ridgewood collection. So I am so sorry that today I wasn't live. I am on a family vacation with my 4 kids. It's going to be one of our very last big family vacations since Emma will be, very soon going to college. But I did want to let you know you want to sign up, put an alarm on your clock, on your phone. Next Friday, I'm going to be live at Lori Holt's house in Salt Lake City. And we're going to be showing a huge trunk show of her next book called Prairie Home. It is going to be amazing. You're going to get to see me and Lori and all the quilts. So I would love for you to join me next Friday. Just put an alarm on your phone so you don't forget, and I'll see you there.